Okay, now I am heading towards. This is very important actually. This is one of the issues. It is poverty in India, of current India, and that is causes and consequences and government initiatives we are going to and talk about. This is a very important topic, as you know that. So, to overcome extreme poverty, that is Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Kaushal Yojana, DDU-GKY, PMKVY, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, and Ayushman Bharat Scheme, and Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana. India's endeavors to overcome extreme poverty, that is Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Kaushal Yojana, as you know these things, and now India is the fastest growing economy in the world today, but extreme poverty remains a roadblock in the India's path to becoming a path of becoming an economic superpower. However, the government has been working actively towards eradicating this gross reality from society. After years of concerted efforts, India finally has set the title of being home to the largest number of people living in extreme poverty in the world, and was overtaken by Nigeria in May this year. With 44 Indians coming out of the clutches of extreme poverty every minute, India has become the country which is growing at the fastest rate in terms of poverty reduction in the world. If the present trend continues, India will make it to the third position by the end of 2018, with the Democratic Republic of the Congo taking the second spot. A recent study states that by 2022, not more than 3% of Indians will be poor, and extreme poverty could be eliminated by 2030. What is extreme poverty all about? Extreme poverty is defined as an individual living on less than $1.9 a day. It is an unusual and complex condition in which an individual does not have any source of income or have an insufficient amount of income to meet his basic needs over some time. The concept of extreme poverty is not only about a lack of money or material resources, but it also deals with a lack of opportunities among individuals to make choices for their sustainable living. What has led to extreme poverty? Extreme poverty is a condition that has not developed on its own. There have been causes which have been responsible for the rise of this condition in the society. Some economists suggest that it is the poor who are responsible for the increase of this condition, as they have little or no concern for their future. In contrast, others say that the poor have become fatalists and resigned themselves to culture of poverty in which nothing can be done to change their economic conditions. So here are some causes which led to the condition of extreme poverty in India. First, lack of education. Education plays an essential role in making a person financially viable, but the poor, due to lack of resources, cannot afford to send their children to school. Some poor consider education as frivolous. They prefer to send their children to work and to contribute to the family's income rather than going to schools. Second, overpopulation. The increasing population of the country is the primary cause of extreme poverty. It has outpaced the economic growth of the country, resulting in no change in the situation of poverty. The size of the families is getting bigger, which reduces the per capita income, leading to lower standards of living. Unemployment. The illiteracy among the poor is a significant cause of unemployment among the poorest sections of the society, which stops them from getting better paying jobs. Corruption. Even though the government is making a lot of efforts to improve the conditions of the poor caught under the clutches of extreme poverty, only a small percentage reaches the beneficiaries due to prevalent corruption and the red tapeism in the country. Absence of basic amenities. The poor are deprived of basic facilities which any person requires for his sustenance. Lack of financial resources stops them from fulfilling their basic human needs. Harsh climate. The tropical climate of India throughout the year makes it difficult for the labor class to work. This results in lowering of the productivity and the wages of the workers. Discrimination and social inequality. A wide disparity is prevalent in society when it comes to the distribution of assets like land, wealth, etc. among the rich and the poor. The poor are deprived of all the basic necessities, while upper and middle income groups are witnessing an increase in their earnings. Lack of skilled labor. There is labor in the country, but skilled labor is in a small number. Although several occasional training initiatives have been launched by the government to train the unskilled labor force, there are still some sections of the poor that are unable and need to be provided with the benefit of these schemes. Many of these causes are aggravated by poverty and created a cycle of suffering that averts India's most needy people from having essential health services, resources, and information that need to survive. Consequences of extreme poverty. Extreme poverty is not only a quelling condition, but also one of the world's biggest problems. The effects of poverty are severe. Some of the consequences are obstruction in the economic growth and development of the country, high infant mortality rate due to inadequate medical facilities, fewer children are enrolled in schools as parents cannot afford their education, infants with low birth weight suffer from mental and physical disabilities, unemployment, and extreme poverty leads to domestic violence, stress among the family members, malnutrition, increase in hygiene and diet related diseases, increased rate of homeless people, terrorism, genocide. What is our 2030 agenda? The 2030 agenda of United Nations Development Program UNDP focuses on the eradication of poverty in all its forms and dimensions from the world, including extreme poverty. This agenda consists of 17 sustainable development goals which aims to end poverty in all its forms everywhere by 2030. Going by the progress made by India in the last 10 years in reducing poverty, it would be able to eliminate extreme poverty by 2030. It will be able to meet the Sustainable Development Goal. Initiatives by the Indian government to eradicate extreme poverty. First, Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Kaushal Yojana. The Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Kaushal Yojana was conceived to get rid of the pangs of deprivations. This scheme empowers the youth in rural regions with the skills and earning capacity on a monthly basis. It is a valuable scheme for the poor in India, in which proper training is imparted. Under this scheme, until now, there are 11 lakh trained beneficiaries, and out of which more than 6 lakh have a job or placement. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana or Skilled India. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana Skilled India was launched on July 16, 2015 to alleviate poverty, to upskill around 40 crores. Indian youth is its ultimate aim. The government scheme for poor students boosts the initiative to find the new sectors for skill development. Third is Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana package to kick out poverty from the lives of downtrodden people. This pro-poor welfare scheme has been executed. The government is mainly motivated the members of parliament to bring the poor people in the limelight. This scheme is total package of almost 1.7 lakh crore rupees, which the government sanctioned in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic to support the poor and help them get the essentials without any hassle. Under this scheme, 75 to 80 crore people will be getting 5 kg of wheat or rice and 1 kg of pulses of their choice. To make sure that our frontline health workers are protected, the government even provided with 50 lakh life insurance. For Ayushman Bharat scheme of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, Ayushman Bharat Yojana National Health Protection Scheme was launched on April 14, 2018. The central government's focus is on the wellness of the low-income families and providing medical benefits to them. Under this scheme, around 10 crore low-income families will be offered an insurance cover of 5 lakh rupees every year and will undergo cashless treatment at all the government and private empaneled hospitals across the country for the secondary and most tertiary care procedures. Okay. Do you want to go about why India is still a poor country? Overpopulation in India, causes and effects, and how to control it. Family planning in India, overpopulation in India, human trafficking in India, child trafficking, child labor in India. Why India is a poor country? Okay. Why India is still a poor country? We'll go for that. Okay. India dreams to develop into a superpower, but a third of the world's poor still lives here. India is one of the fastest developing economies in the world, but also home to the largest number of malnourished children. Majority of India lives in villages, and at the same time, rural India is facing the hardship of poverty much harder than urban India. Though India is growing economically, but the growth of this kind is creating too much demarcated societies, one poor and another rich. Prevailing poverty and hunger continue to haunt the economic growth and making it further slow. International poverty line is $1.25 per day, and as per the World Bank report, 2.7% of the point of the population in India lives below the poverty line, whereas 68.7% survive on less than $2 per day. 25% of children in India are malnourished. India has the worst infant mortality rate, and it is worse ever, even worse than Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Although gross domestic product is showing an impressive growth over a period of time, but because of poverty, regional, economical, and social disparity has increased to manifold. These are few of the daunting and much talked about facts related to poverty of India. Poverty in India. Number of poor are declining, but only in few states such as Punjab, Northern Haryana, Kerala, and not in Bihar and Assam. Traditionally disadvantaged sections of the society, including scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, indigenous peoples, and Dalits, are still poor in spite of many efforts. But why, despite all the efforts and schemes to eradicate poverty, India is still a poor country? Why does India continue to be poor after 66 years of independence? Corruption, lack of education, distribution of wealth, population explosion, caste system, mentality, mismanagement, and are some of the widespread causes of poverty in India. For an example, India has the largest public food distribution system for the poor in the world, at 21% of adults and half of India's children and 5 are malnourished. With inflation, price of all the essential commodities such as fruits and vegetables is increasing, that is also increasing the number of people relying on subsidized food. Because of prevalent corruption, quantity of food grains recommended to be subsidized never reaches the needy and poor completely. According to an Asian Development Bank study, a sustained 10% increase in domestic food prices could push the additional 64 million people, almost 2% of Asia's 3.3 billion people, below the poverty line of $1.25 a day. Reasons why India is still a poor country. India, if not completely, but is almost synonymous with the world corruption. Numerous scams in the recent years explain the saga of corruption. Corruption in the public distribution. So if India is not completely but in almost synonymous with the world corruption, numerous scams in the recent years explain the saga of corruption. Almost all the government departments are affected from it. Corruption is regarded as one of the biggest reasons of poverty in India. Corruption in public distribution system is the worst of its kind. The leading source of corruption in India is entitlement programs and social spending schemes that are meant for the welfare of our society. For an example, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, a $9 billion program, planned to offer 100 days of employment annually for the rural poor. But Manrega failed because of corruption and mismanagement. Just like Manrega, the National Rural Livelihood Mission met the same fate. It was planned to empower. The government is putting efforts to have an inclusive growth, but corruption is playing its role. So all such programs designed for poor and needy fail to impress and help them. Instead, poor are even denied of their basic right and needs. Corruption is just like an endemic in India. It leads to social inequalities and hate economy of our nation. Funds granted to uplift the poor are misused. Poverty is further worsened by the administrative corruption. Even though the simplest of the task is not performed without a bribe, corruption also delays and diverts the economic growth. As per the data compiled by Bloomberg, here about $14.5 billion in food was plundered by the corrupt politicians in the state of Uttar Pradesh. The loot resulted poor to survive without the required quantity of food and children to suffer from malnutrition. There are many other causes of administrative corruption further deterioration the situation and making poorer. Economic policies. It is believed that economic reform started in early 1990s are responsible for the fall down of rural economy in India. It also led to the agrarian crisis because of high debt. Poor farmers are left with no other choice than to commit suicide. According to official statistics, number of farmers committing suicides has also increased since 1997. The new policies by the government encourage farmers to switch to cash crops in place of traditional crops, but this has led to a manifold increase in farm input cost, which ultimately resulted in the economic burden and thus poverty. Also, villages in India are not self-sufficient like they used to be. The rural youth is mostly not well educated, lacks skill, and not even interested in farming. All these are enough for a disastrous and poor future. Government should come up with the plans to make villages self-reliant. Skill-based education must be provided to the youth. Mismanagement, faulty development models. Much of the fund raised or allocated to the anti-poverty schemes is consumed in administrative cost. So the entire chain that is formed to help the poor does not allow this to happen. High population growth rate. Ever increasing population is not a direct cause of poverty, but is an effect. But it is an effect. It is rightly said that excess of everything is bad. This is true in this case as well. More people means the need of more resource, food, etc. But if this surplus is trained in a right way, then it can take part in the economic development of the country. Ever increasing economic inequality. India's growth model for sure has benefited the businessmen but failed when we see that near about 213 million Indians go hungry every night. Rights of organized as well as unorganized workers are being violated. They are underpaid and not paid according to the industrial growth and even rising inflation. Due to such a visible inequality, each year millions of girls are sexually exploited and trafficked for money. At the same time, child labor has also increased wealthy or acquiring more wealth in such an unequal scenario. Top 5% of households have 38% of the total assets of India, whereas bottom 60% has merely 13% of the assets. Lack of small scale sectors. Majority of economic policies and reforms are not friendly towards small scale industries. So these policies are making and creating bureaucrats but surpassing entrepreneurs. Mentality of poor. Not only external factors but also the internal will of poor people to remain poor is an obstacle. You must have seen healthy beggars at red light. If they are asked to do tasks instead of begging, then their simple answer is no. Even their kids do not go to school but just beg. They can never come out of this vivacious cycle of begging and poverty. To come out of poverty, one has to change his or her mind. Poor must understand the importance of education and its lifelong benefits. There is no shortage of jobs in India. Even if you are not educated, you have enough jobs like wrapping the color, adding buttons to the already stitched clothes and sweaters, making boards for electronic goods, etc. I have seen people earning from these kinds of jobs and sending their kids to school to have a better future. India needs a great political leaders to push the nation in a forward direction. Productivity and how to use human resource or the productivity must be focused. India must educate its very every child so that yes, resource can be added. India must have a clear economic vision and greater system. Great system is in place to execute this. Confused ideologies must be separated from the clear cut and result oriented ones. India must be free from corruption to become rich. Now we'll go for child labor in India. Okay. What is the causes, facts, and consequences of child labor? When it comes to we Indians, take pride in the fact that India is rapidly emerging as a leading developing nation. Prosperity is reaching several segments of people, and the benefits have reached out to large parts of the country where none existed just a few decades ago. But the story is not entirely green. There is a dark underbelly that has and is contributing to this growth. It's the use of child labor. As a nation, we have long accepted this very cruel practice of using children as a very cheap and often very free labor. We have turned a blind eye to children being denied their right to be in school and an opportunity to better their lives. The problem is across the both the urban and rural areas, and we have been by and large living with this black truth. Sorry, consequences of child labor in India. The picture that emerges is dark. Children are working in hazardous export-oriented industries like fireworks, matchworks, electroplating, beady rolling, glass ball blowing, brassware, lock making, glass blowing, lead mining, and stone quarrying, among several others. These are places that have a severe negative impact on the health of anyone working there. In the case of children, by the time they begin touching their teens, they are already infected with several life-threatening diseases. Sitting at home in a city, we have no idea of the terrible conditions that these children are made to work in, and for more than 10 to 12 hours a day. In many cases, the children are offered by the parents in lieu of loan that they may have taken from the factory owner. So it's a barter deal, loan in cash that is repaid in kind through the child. Not all the barter deals. Some work for money where the pay is little as 10 rupees per day. There are other situations where children are made to work. These are typically home-run cottage industries like handloom and carpet weaving. This author has personally visited carpet weaving centers in Baduhi and Mirzapur in eastern UP, and has been children working alongside the parents in virtually all homes lying in interior rural areas. The typical explanation given by the parents is that they see the child as an additional resource for income generation. This is a necessity, even the abject poverty prevailing in rural areas and in the absence of any social security system. People look at raising children as additional manpower, which further exacerbates the population problem that India is reeling under. Its catch 2022 situation: a poor villager can't afford to raise children, but continues to produce them in the hope that they will add to the income while also providing income security in his old age. This is one of the primary reasons one sees large families in rural areas where deep poverty prevails. While the situation is still understandable, even if not justifiable, what about child labor and abuse in urban and semi urban cities and towns? What about our homes? This gets murkier. And remember the recent case in Vasant Kunj, a South Delhi middle to upper middle class colony, where a maid from Jharkhand was locked up at home and was beaten and tortured for over several months. She was denied food and even she couldn't take it anymore. She barely managed to scream for help. When the police, along with representatives of the NGO, finally managed to get an entry, they were horrified to find a starving, sick girl with scars on her body that included burn marks. She was filthy, having skin infections, and was in a traumatized state. All this in the home of a lady working in a senior position in a well paid MNC. And we think that child labor and abuse happens only in the villages. This is right. Here in the heart of India's capital and in the home of so called highly educated and highly paid executive. How can we live with this? So, what makes a person living in urban area do this? Especially in an age of high awareness of the laws, active roles played by NGOs and hyperactive media, despite this, we still have people employing children as domestic labor and abusing them. What has made us so cold and cruel? Why have we allowed our inner conscience to die? What legacy of morality and ethics do we leave for our children when a child's first education is supposed to start from home? The very home where another child is denied his basic fundamental right to education and life of dignity. A nation stands on the legs of its society and the citizens that live within it. If we have to build a nation where the next generation can live with dignity and fairness, where there is equal opportunity to prosper for all, then we have to ensure that we lay the very core of that society on a strong foundation, that is our home. If there is a child labor happening in our home or in our vicinity, it is our moral right to raise our voice against it. If we don't, we would lose our moral right to look into our children's eyes and expect respect from them. We cannot raise one child's future while denying another one. Now go for child safety in India. This is a blog of mapsofindia.com. My India child need safety in India. So here my India, okay, my mapsofindia.com, my India, okay, very important entity. Okay, after this I will stop and look for other things. In 2007, other than President of India, Dr. Abdul Kalam had said, the rights of women and children and their aspirations all are paramount importance in our march towards an inclusive and equitable society. Despite the numerous measures taken in the country, India has hardly ever asked the questions: how safe is my child? In India, child abuse is highly misunderstood. Most parents fail to look beyond safety in terms of constant chaperonage. Child abuse may take many forms, from physical violence to sexual abuse, from emotional neglect to malnutrition, discrimination to exploitation. The nation suffers from a deep seated awareness of the various forms of abuse and neglect that children suffer from. Child labor. Look at country's child labor scenario is heart wrenching. The 2011 census report pegs the number of working children in the country between 5 and 14 years of age to be at 43.53 lakh. A number of NGOs, however, believe that the official count falls short, that the number of child laborers in the country is far more, despite the persistence of Child Labor Prohibition Regulation Act, which details some 18 occupations and 65 processes which are hazardous and in which child labor may not be employed. It is estimated that a number of these regularly employ children under 14 years. Manufacturing of matchsticks, crackers, and precious stone cutting sectors have to be highlighted as some of the hazardous occupations that employ children. Agriculture engages about 60% child labor. Poverty, lack of social security, and lack of wage negotiability are key reasons for employment of child labor in the country. According to UNICEF, India has the greatest child labor force in the world. While domestic labor is rampant, nothing much is done about it until some case of abuse crops up in the media. Child trafficking. According to a news report from 2014, about 135,000 children are estimated to be trafficked in India each year. Trafficked children are sold into slavery, domestic servitude, beggary, and sex industry. Children are kidnapped and often even bought from remote villages, more from impoverished families. The child trafficking industry in India is India's greatest shame, and yet very little has been done about it in terms of policing. In a number of states, powerful cartels manage trafficking, buying of parents, and the police to keep away legal restrictions. According to Childline India, some 1,000 to 1,500 children are smuggled from India to Saudi Arabia each year to beg during the Hajj. Child trafficking is highest in the states of Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Meghalaya, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. Child sex abuse. Sexual abuse is one of the greatest threats to the safety and health of Indian children. Child sex abuse has been on the rise in the nation. About 10% of the urban homeless in the country are children, and one in every two urban homeless child is believed to be sexually abused. The horrifying reality of CSA has just about started to dawn on the nation. According to a recent news report, about 8 cases of sex crimes against children have been registered each day over the past 2 years, but conviction rates are as low as 24%. In case of CSA, boys are just as much at risk as girls, says a UNICEF report. According to a study of 13 Indian states, 69% children reported being physically abused, of which 54.6% were boys. In case of CSA, 88.6% children were abused by a parent or a close family member. Much of the trafficking is conducted under the guise of marriage, especially that of young girls under 14 to much older men. Malnutrition and disease prevention. While it is not clearly visible in urban regions, among the middle class, malnutrition is one of the greatest threats to the children of our country. About 30% of the malnourished children of the world live in our country. Control of preventable diseases, another area where Indian children are extremely vulnerable. While polio has been eradicated thanks to the extensive drive undertaken by the government, there are a number of vaccines and inoculations that can save precious lives but are not administered due to ignorance or poverty. According to the United Nations, about 4 children die in India every minute, most of these from preventable conditions and diseases such as pneumonia, malaria, diarrhea, measles, typhoid, etc. About 2.1 million children in the country die before they are 5 years old. According to the National Urban Health Mission, more than 46% of urban poor children are underweight, and almost 60% of urban poor children miss total immunization before completing 1 year. While undoubtedly much is being done in the field of mother and child health by the union and the state governments, poverty and subsequent malnutrition still remain looming menaces. Female feticide and gender discrimination. Despite being proud of a legacy of strong queens and women leaders, girl children are not safe in the country. That is, if they are born at all, female feticide and gender discrimination are rampant, so much so that the sex ratio in many states is skewed and calamitous. According to a news report, the sex ratio in India as of 2014 is 943 females to 1,000 males. Some states are well below this national average. Haryana has a sex ratio of 879 females to 1,000 males. An allied evil is discrimination based on the child's gender. Girl children in India are often denied education and healthy nutrition too. Prime Minister Narendra Modi Beti Bachao Beti Padhao campaign is one giant step in generating awareness and combating this evil, and yet India has to make much progress in this area. Female feticides are surprisingly much higher in number in urban India than in rural areas. Childline 1098. Childline India Foundation launched a toll-free helpline Childline in 1996 to aid children in distress. The initiative is supported by the Union Ministry of Women and Child Development and focuses on street children who are victims of abuse. The toll-free number of 1098 is manned round the clock and operates in 291 cities or districts of the country, providing support to children in need. Over 31 million calls have been attended to since inception, making a great headway in the field of child safety and protection. What can I do? First, report all cases of suspected children abuse in your vicinity to the police, child line, or an appropriate NGO for the safety and protection of the child and children involved. Donate generously to NGOs such as the Akshay Patra Foundation, which help in providing midday meals to about 1.4 million children each day. Volunteer to spend a few hours each week with the Teach for India program that aims at providing quality education to underprivileged children. Promote the cause of girl children under the programs such as Beti Bachao Beti Padhao campaigns through your family and friends. Connect with various NGOs and organizations working towards protections and safety of children in your neighborhood. Okay. Okay, this is all about child's. Okay, thank you.